And where are you located?
I can unmute now, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Kenya.
Okay.
And the things that you said are really interesting. And I don't know, I think it's because I haven't worked a lot with the abusers. I've worked mostly with the victims of abuse. And so the narrative I think I have adopted over time is changing for, how do I put it? When you were saying what you were saying, what was running through my mind was there's a lot of openness for both parties. And I think a lot of people lack openness for both parties, both the abuser and the victim, because often cases, the abuser was also a victim that they're working through. So yeah, it's been a bit difficult because you'll find organizations that offer help for this, mostly women, are closed or they're operating at minimum capacity, so they're unable to really help them or offer a lot of help. So that has been a struggle, and I've been trying to figure out how do you help people in that capacity.
So do you notice that for you, there are, certain biases that sometimes prevent you from being able to do your best work? Sometimes, like when you go back and reflect on it, or are you pretty much able to kind of remove those biases and still adapt and overcome?
For most of my cases, I'm able to work without bias, but there's some, I think, when you start doing the work, you notice that your biases come in. I think, especially working with victims of abuse, I haven't talked to so many, but the ones on my way, I find myself, for lack of a better word, sorry.
I couldn't hear you. Your thing went out, your signal. It's okay.
Can you?
No, say something else.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, now I can hear you.
All right. So I was saying for most of my clients, most of the clients I work with, I don't find myself struggling with bias, but when it comes to abuse, sometimes bias does come in. Like I've just realized right now when you are talking that I had a bias and I wasn't carrying it because I haven't thought of abusers. I've worked mostly with victims. So until you stated it right now, I hadn't considered it.
And it's I think it's one of those things that because we are human, right? And I tell people all the time, a clinician is not outside of being a human being. In being a human being, we have to work in a place that allows us to just simply, in some areas, be able to better cultivate space for healing for other people by recognizing some of the things that I think that we have personal views on that may weigh on the way that we deliver therapy. For me, my personal way of dealing with my biases and things that may kind of change the way that I initiate my work with my clients is simply to recognize when they're giving me their story, their narrative. Like, am I finding ways to personally identify with those things? Or am I finding ways to professionally help them understand better what it is they're going through? And so those are two different things. For me, if I'm in a place where I'm just simply helping them navigate, providing their narrative, and I'm just simply helping them go through life, trying to have better ways to cope with or better ways to, view some of the things that they're going through and adapt healthier mechanisms for living their life in general. It doesn't include me putting myself in a position of, well, if I were them, I would do that. Or I remember when I went through that, and I know that that's tough for them. Because when we start saying things like that, I feel like we are now inflicting and literally exploring therapy with them from a biased lens instead of a therapeutic lens. And so it's one thing for us to, you know, employ accurate empathy and be empathetic for what they're going through and understanding. But that requires curiosity. And that's the difference. I think that when we are exploring therapy with them from a curious lens, so that we can provide them with a clinical conceptualization of what they're going through, that looks like, that must have been really difficult for you. Was it something you found to be particularly difficult? Did you have issues accepting that particular experience? You know, asking those types of questions, probing for their personal feelings and personal afflictions that they have gained or been inflicted with over the course of those relationship turmoils. Because domestic violence is definitely something that affects not just couples, but people, right? In general, because it's a domestic situation. It means that it's happening on citizens soil of a country and people that so it might be your friends, it might be your family members, those people can also attribute some level of domestic violence to you. Intimate partner violence, however, I think is more elevated because you have so many people that are stuck in that cycle of abuse because they've grown very close and connected with that person. And so when you're in an intimate partner violent relationship, the way it differs, the way that I conceptualize it and explain it to people, the easiest way to understand it is that when you're in an intimate partner companionship with a person, eventually that person becomes a mirror of you. And we like to refer it as codependency and that sort of thing, but not necessarily. It's a normal phase of development over the life cycle of a couple's relationship. Even in polygamous relationships and polyamorous relationships that are polyandrous in nature, those people are all interconnected. It's a web of connectivity that is drawn not only by filial lives and not only by filial lines, but they're also interconnected on some invisible loyalties to one another. And so you have to find out what are the loyalties, what are the things that you vowed, even unsubconsciously to deliver to that person. How did you say you were going to continue to be there for that person? Does your actions, right, reflect that you are holding up that level of integrity to that relationship, for one, and to those people, for two? Because the loyalties that we have and the fidelity we have to the relationship is something different than we have to those individuals. The relationship is an individual breathing and living component that has its own growth that it has to, embark upon. What the people that are a component to the relationship are responsible for is pouring into and cultivating that relationship, sort of like a tree, if you will. And so if we're doing that work towards cultivating the ideal relationship, then we don't experience domestic violence or intimate partner violence within the confines of our relationship. We experience love, maturation, and going through, we may have tough times, but we're able to adequately problem solve in a very safe space because the relationship allows us to do that. To understand that we have to have our individuation and differentiation away from the house of the relationship separately, and we have to be able to express who we are through the relationship, and that person and the relationship is going to help us grow better on the outside of it as well, as long as we're doing our part. And it's about understanding what led to the intimate partner violence. I know a lot of clinicians are very, very afraid to have sessions even with people who have struggled with intimate partner violence, and the first thing that they do is jump to making a decision for that person, right? because, you know, we've all been geared up as to how to create escape plans for the victims. We know how to deal with the victim. You know, it's okay. We can do that. We can do the victim work. That's the easy stuff. But then when the victim is ambivalent about leaving, because internally they are, that's the truth. Anybody that you've developed an escape plan for, anybody that you as a clinician have kind of, you know, positioned yourself as a therapist that says, you know, girl, you need to leave. You know, guys, you need to leave. Violence doesn't
No.
live in love. You know, we cannot say that because there is no way that we can objectively and honestly say to a person that there is an abstract locus of control for every human being that's identical. And so what that means is that we already know as a clinician that all people respond to distressing situations in the same way. They don't. They simply don't. So we can't say that when a person is heavily distressed, they feel like they've been betrayed in some way in that relationship, their feelings, we can't invalidate their feelings with, it's never justified for you to hit that other person. We can justify that the feelings of that intimate partner that has been abused, however, that person never expected you to hit them. You understand what I'm saying? And so because you defied the trust that they put in you to protect them, because that's what I hear them saying, they're now ambivalent about whether or not they should be able to trust you and go to sleep with you and be with you and cook for you and nurture for this relationship with you. So how does it feel knowing how they're feeling right now in this moment? Because what they're feeling is that you have betrayed them. Helping them to understand that piece is how you connect the abuser with a different side of them, because you're not judging them, but you're helping them to be in a place of understanding, simply understanding where that other person is coming from. Because oftentimes the person who's abused, they've already, and it's so many ways that they conceptualize that this is okay, this is acceptable, it's something I did, because they internalize naturally. And it's not about you internalizing it. It's not about you understanding or feeling like you're to blame for it. Because when I tell people about relationship issues, nobody is to blame. The relationship is a house in and of itself. It's a living and breathing entity. It's an organism that's by itself and is separate. So the people that are party to that relationship are never to blame for anything. And they're like, well, I cheated. And I cheated, so he beat me. And that means it's my fault. No. The relationship, when it's not being cultivated properly, will call on both of you to do something outrageous to get back to it. Because no two people are always leaning in at the same time for the same amount of time. So the relationship may need more of you than you had been willing previously to attribute to it. And so that's its way of getting your attention. It's just like a child acting out. They don't act out because they just want to. They act out because they need something from you. And so in order to get that need, all of a sudden you're in a place doing things that you have already conditioned yourself as not ever being able to be in that space. I'll never cheat. I'll never hit my woman. I'll never hit my man. You say these things, and what you do is set yourself up for failure because you fail to recognize when it's coming. What I notice is that oftentimes the abusers are sometimes hurt more than the person that's being abused when they start to recognize that they are something they thought they were not. They become something that they swore to never become. And oftentimes this is after they've already left their significant other because they realize that they bought a part out of them that they never wanted to see. And through therapy, they realize it's not that they bought something out of you you didn't want to see. It's about the fact that you focus too much on trying to not become a thing, and that became the thing that you became because it was there. When you want greatness out of life, when you want growth and maturation out of life, You have to achieve that by way of evoking the positive emotions, not refuting and fighting the negative emotions and the negative actions. And so what that looks like is positive self-talk, not reflective or reactivity. And so if you're trying to become a particular person, speak that into existence. Don't say, I don't want to become my father, because that's exactly what you will become. Let's talk about what you do want to become. I want to become a great man. I want to become a great woman. I want to put my energy in this type of advocacy. I want to put my energy in this type of advocacy, because then those things that you seek to avoid naturally will never be a part of that cycle, because it doesn't align with the things that you desire in your life. And so I think that when you're working with couples who are struggling with intimate partner violence, families who are struggling with domestic violence in their life, you have to allow them space to really understand one another, but also create a safe space for expression, if you will. Transparency, because you have to remove the judgment. When we're judging people for the things that they're doing, we're only further digging a hole that they've already started to dig themselves. Therapy is supposed to be a place for transformative growth. You grow in a way that transforms not only yourself, but it transforms the way that you view life in general. And you're not afflicted with the things that drive guilt. Does that make sense? Pamela, did you have anything before we close out too?
Sorry.
You're sick. Jane is, really weak. I can hear you. So I can't hear you. I did message it to you. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out this segment so that I can start receiving some of the presentations from the other clinicians and putting it all together. And if you guys have anything else, feel free to call me and we can converse further there. And I know like a lot of, for the followers, the people who are viewing from YouTube, and if you guys catch this on the replay, let me know if you have questions, you know how to reach me. And of course, my email, my phone number, and things like that are listed there. So I do appreciate you guys' time and attention in this video. If you made it to the end, say Yahoo. So that's all that I have. You guys have an amazing rest of your Saturday.